First of all, I'd just like to thank the speakers before me because of their contributions. I'm going to try not to introduce any politics at all. What I'm going to speak about today is some reflections and, I guess, learnings that I've gleaned over the last couple of years of doing the work that I've been doing. My partner and I have been helping people for the last probably 3.5 years with a range of things. I'd say a third of my work would be cancer support, a third would be bizarre autoimmune diseases that the medical establishment throw their hands up, and the last third of the work would probably be psycho-emotional and spiritual crisis work. But really what I want to talk today about is something that the previous speaker, Steve, was speaking about, and pretty much coming from the perspective that medicinal marijuana, while it being an incredible powerful tool, is not actually the magic bullet that's going to save everyone all the time. And there's a whole lot of really important do's and don'ts that can maximise the outcomes when we're using, whether it's cannabis therapy or whether it's actually just plant medicines in general, which is the other thing I'm going to talk on. I guess to start, why do we even use plant medicines? Because they're really, really intelligent things. I think if we look at the way that the world exists and we realise that this planet's been around for a few billion years and it all started on a mineral base, that mineral base then developed into a plant base. So the plants have had a few more laps around the sun than we have, and they've learned a few tricks. And our biology is based on plant physiology as well, and many of our compounds and genes and everything else, right down to our amino acids, are all based on plant compounds and chemicals. So they basically provide us with the materials that we can use to tune the organism, so to speak. And a particular emerging interest for me is the use of not only traditional herbal plants, but also what's known as weeds, or what I'd refer to as emerging plants, invasive species. Because what I find is that the planet, being an intelligent being itself, actually provides the plants we need as we need them, where we need them. And this is why, in this crisis time of the planet, where there is so much disease and dysfunction, where much of the planet is now discovering the medicinal marijuana and also plant healings. So most of the herbs that I use, and I use some 40 or 50 odd herbs, but the mainstays of the ones I use are actually wild crafted and locally abundant. And we're using such things as Bidden's pilosa, which some of you might know as cobbler's peg or farmer's friend, which, believe it or not, is a powerful, powerful plant healing agent. It's a powerful liver protector, liver builder. It's a powerful plant-based antibiotic that doesn't strip out your gut biome. And it's also a powerful nurturer and toner of all our soft connective tissues, digestive tissues, and so on. Another one is the native smilax and nettles, the native herb robert, Geranium solandaris, and so on. So I've been using those because they're actually here growing in the soils and providing the compounds we actually need for, whether it's for midges, whether it's for ticks, Lyme's disease, and so on. So we find that the plants appear not as a random thing, because it just is, but actually in response to the biological need of the planet's inhabitants, including us, if we're paying attention. I use tinctures, and I use an alcohol tincture for a reason. There's an esoteric truth and a mystery behind the fact that of alcohol and what alcohol is. There's a whole bunch of alcohols, but one of the truths is that all plant material will ferment and create alcohol. And only plant fermented alcohol is actually able to be metabolised, at some cost to the liver, I admit, but able to be metabolised by the human organism. Other synthetic alcohols are highly toxic and will kill you very quickly. The other thing is that alcohol actually performs a function as a vessel to carry the spirit of the plant world. And I know that sounds a little airy-fairy, but it's basically a truth. And that's why alcohol is used to medicate, because of course the plants are the most evolved emotional beings. And if we look at our most evolved plants, they're all the aromatics, and I'm talking beyond the herbal level, onto things such as the fragrance of the rose, the poppy, the narcotics. They're all highly aromatic, and they're drawn and they work through our emotional body. So Alcohol carries the spirit of the plant, and it's that spirit of the plant that we're trying to introduce to the physical body to harmonise and normalise. Most of us are here today because we're either trying to help us, here in this hall because we're either trying to heal ourselves from some sort of crisis, or we're trying to heal those we love with some sort of crisis. And that crisis can appear in any part of our being. I like to think of ourselves as sort of a nesting layer of beings, of a physical body which we obviously build through our minerals, an emotional body which we nurture with our plants and herbs, and a mental body that is nourished with our thoughts that precipitate out of our biology. And then we have an overall synthetic soul that coordinates, is what I call the coordinating intelligence. Now, each one of those bodies is nested in with the other, but they have connection points. And so we can tell when our emotions feed back into our solar plexus, for instance, through our heart or through our mind. And one of the reasons I believe that we have a healing crisis and we find ourselves stopped in our life one way or another, whether it's physical or otherwise, is that the various parts of our being are out of alignment. They're not communicating properly, they're not working properly for a variety of reasons. And if we want to get through the healing crisis, whatever that means, what it means is we need to make sure that any dysfunctional disequilibrium is corrected and that the bodies become into alignment. We can do that by using the plant intelligences as we collect them in a tincture, because the coordinating intelligence that stipulates which plant is going to form which structure is kept in its mineral code. Those of you who garden will understand that if our mineral balance in the soil is not correct, then our plant form isn't going to express itself properly. So that shows us that the mineral foundation to all life forms, because our bodies are built up by minerals as well, and we generally extract them from our plants in our diet. If that's not correct, then nothing else flows. So we have to start with the minerals. When I prepare the tinctures, I use the herbal extracts out of the alcohol extract, and then I'll actually burn the herb, and I'll burn it down to an ash, which basically reduces that plant's physical body down to its mineral constituents. And then I'll put that ash into a lye, and then I'll evaporate that lye down, and I'll obtain a mineral salt, and I'll put that back into the tincture. And that creates an alchemical key that enables your coherent synthesizing self to grab those plant compounds and put them straight into the organism. So you actually achieve very, very profound effects. That's why I use alchemical tinctures, despite the fact that some people have a problem with the alcohol. For people who have alcohol issues, I often will use glycerin as a substitute, but I find that the alcohol has a particular effect that can't be replicated. I think it's important to remember that our body always exists in the present moment, but other parts of us do not. Our minds and our emotions often get stuck in the past or tend to drift away into the future. And even the body's traumas, for instance, if we're suffering from chronic inflammation, it's the body remembering the past and being dragged back out of its presence. The body's the only one that wants to be present all the time, and this is why it's important. If we want to achieve the changes out of a situation, we have to change. As I think somebody said before, we can't change where we're at unless we actually do things differently. So we have to break everything up. All our patterns have to change, and what needs to happen is that we start with a basic body physiology. We have a head which thinks a lot and feels a lot and tends to interfere with what the body wants to do. One of the mediating, joining, communicating devices in the body to achieve these synthesis or cohesion is your thyroid and your parathyroid glands, and they mediate what the brain thinks it wants to tell the body to do, go through via your vagus nerve into all your organs and tell those organs how to change glandular functions and all sorts of things. This is why the thyroid is key, and which is why iodine therapy is recommended, although I wouldn't recommend the crystalline iodine that people have been proposed to be taking. I actually suggest using Lugol's Iodine Solution and applying it topically and watching the absorption rates to regulate your thyroid function. Iodine's a core nutrient, not only for your thyroid, but for most of your glands to work properly. And right outside your thyroid gland is your parathyroids. They sit on either side of them. And their core nutrient is actually boron. And unfortunately, there's a lot of boron deficiency. And I'm actually going to leave a protocol available for people to come and get, because, and you can do this when I've finished. I've got a whole bunch of them. If you don't know about boron, it regulates everything from your sex hormones to your calcium exchange in your blood, and it becomes really important. Many of the tumours that we see in society today, particularly breast and prostate cancers, are mostly about calcium deposits and calcifications. That calcium exchange is regulated by your parathyroid, and if your boron levels are not sufficient, your parathyroids won't work, and you'll leach and elevate your calcium levels into your blood. Then that'll have all sorts of things from dental decay through to osteoarthritis and so on. So one of the mainstays of a protocol that I recommend for most people is supplementation with boron, which is really easy to do because most of you will remember borax. You can buy it in the supermarket. It's a cleaning product and it's been much maligned. Okay, it is, contrary to scientific error, it is not actually harmful. It's an essential nutrient and you can make it for yourself really easily. The back of my protocol has a recipe dosage rate, and it's as easy as putting half a level teaspoon of borax powder into half a litre of clean pure water. And there's your basic solution. And then you take that at a rate of 1 teaspoon of that solution every day. And you start to re-regulate your calcium levels. Now, obviously there's some important do's and don'ts in regards to that, because you can't re-regulate your calcium exchange all at once. So if you've had 40 or 50 years of dysfunctional calcium exchange, that's going to require some adjustment. This is going to have implications for kidney stones. It helps you remove the kidney stones, and also all other arthritic conditions. The other benefit of the boron therapy is it's actually also a very powerful fungicide. And so, as we know, that the Candida fungus overgrowth is one of the leading causes of tumour growth, leaky gut syndrome, and a whole bunch of other health issues. And that if we're consuming sugars, then via that Candida overgrowth, that will directly feed your tumour before you get any of those nutrients. So the boron therapy also completely destroys Candida growth. I've got a higher protocol rate if we're doing Candida growth and all other fungus, whether it's athlete's foot all the way through. It's also quite a powerful agent against mycoplasma, and if we know about the biowarfare stuff in terms of chemtrails and other vaccinated contaminants, then mycoplasma is a nasty one, and boron will also deal with that. Most people will have somewhat of a minor, what's known as a Herkimer reaction. Now, the Herkimer reaction is when we start to slough off parasites or bacteria or other agents, and you dump it into the lymphatic system and the bloodstream gets toxed out and you start to feel a little bit sick, or even worse than you did. That usually passes, and if you find your Herkimer reaction is extreme, then obviously back off whatever it is that you're using as your fungicide, in this case boron, and make sure you're adequately hydrating with clean fluid water. There's an occasional gut discomfort. Some people report having a little bit of loose bowel movement for a day or two just while things are resetting, but particularly while we're getting stuff out of the gut. But everything should pretty much stabilise after a couple of days. I've personally been taking boron now for the last 6 months because I obviously take all the things that I'm talking about. And I generally find that it's best to give yourself a day or two off every week. So I tend to take my boron 5 days a week through the weekdays and then have the weekend off. Some people take it for 3 weeks straight and then have a week off, but my body's a little bit quicker and I like to just do it that way. So I'd really strongly encourage anybody who's interested in maintaining a slightly higher optimal level of body function to please consider the boron therapy. And I've got more sheets here if anyone wants them. I'll leave them here. They're the red ones because I've got 5 sheets I'm offering today. So boron, it's really important. because that leads into the gut biome and how our healthy immune system functions based on the reflex between your gut and your mind and also your emotional body. But we need to get the candida cleared, the mycoplasma clean and the blood clean so that the immune system can be pumping. So the second biggest obstacle to a functioning gut that I find is a nasty little bacteria called Helicobacter pylori. Most people have a little colony of that in their guts, and that's not a problem. But what you find is if you've been on a long course of antibiotics, particularly more than about 3 weeks, the Helicobacter is about the only thing that the antibiotics won't knock out, and you get a massive overgrowth. And that'll lead to ulcerative colitis and a whole bunch of terrible, terrible problems. So one of the other things we have to do before we can start rebuilding the body in any kind of health is get rid of your Helicobacter pylori. I generally do this by augmenting and opening up your blood membrane levels with ginger root tea, going on raw honey a couple of tablespoons a day, but principally there's a combination tincture I use making Bidens pilosa, Sitta acuta, Usnea species and a Nigella sativa, and that basically you go in at about 3 mils a day, 3 times a day for about 10 days, and that completely cleans the Helicobacter pylori out. Then we do a 30-day recovery with basically live probiotics and gut restore tinctures, and basically that takes care of the Helicobacter, which means that the gut function can then be restored, and we obviously combine that with introducing the appropriate foods and removing all your inflammatory agents. I've had a lot of success with that mix, and I'll leave that protocol there if anyone's interested in that one as well. In terms of trying to tweak the metabolism, one thing that's really critical is to start running the body on far more oils and far less sugars. So that's what's known generally as ketogenics. I'm not going to go into too much details about that other than to encourage everybody to look into it a little bit more, because obviously breaking it down, basically you can either run on sugars, which is a dirty fuel. It creates a lot of heat, a lot of inflammation and a lot of toxicity and a lot of psycho-emotional problems that come along with it, or we can run on oils, which is a cool fuel that's highly easily digestible, doesn't need to have a highly pumped system, and also feeds directly into the brain. So I'd really strongly encourage people to completely eliminate sugar from their diet. Honey is okay, different metabolic pathway. Let's also not forget that fructose in fruit is a sugar. It uses the same metabolic pathway and it will feed your tumour via your candida just as much as your refined sugar eel. So please don't make that mistake. I strongly recommend people who are dealing with either candida issues or cancerous issues, tumours and so on, to please try and completely eliminate your sugar and try and completely eliminate your fruits and keep them down to 1 a day if you can't, and choose that fruit wisely. Okay, go something like fresh pawpaw. Don't have a high sugary thing. Berries, whatever. I'm not going to go into do's and don'ts of diets too much, but I'm just saying please keep your fruits down and your sugars down. Up your leafy greens. Eat more greens. Eat more greens. Raw greens. Okay? Veggie juice, not fruit juice. Cannabis juice. I want to have a quick chat on what's known as titration, which is a silly word. I like the term finding your dose. Lots of people ask me, what's a dose? What's a standard dose? Is the Rick Simpson's protocol? What about that 60 grams? What about this? What about that? Relax. It's not about the dose. It's about how your body works and how you're interacting with your body. The way that we all titrate or find our dose is a really basic, simple process. You start low and you keep increasing slowly, slowly, slowly. Every day increase. Depending on your type of cannabinoid therapy, the ability to adjust your dose obviously changes. I work with tinctures, so it's very easy to adjust a drop-by-drop dose. I recommend most people start on a couple of drops and you increase. The more your body needs the cannabinoids, the higher the dose you can obviously tolerate. I have some people who can manage a migraine on a single dose, that's it, gone, done. And then I have people in extreme pain management palliative care situation who might be taking 20 drops every 3 hours. There is no normal. We're all different and we all require a different dose. The important thing is you don't want to underdose. There's no problem with overdosing, because the worst that'll happen is you'll probably want to go and have a lie down, and that's okay. That's good for you too. So I strongly recommend taking small doses. I recommend having several doses. It takes about 3 or 4 hours generally for your body to metabolize cannabinoids. So, you know, every 3 or 4 hours is a generally good guide. It's better to have several small doses than one large dose, and it's definitely better to at least double your dose for nighttime. You want to have a good sleep, you want to have your body doing its deep healing work, and you want to have plenty of endocannabinoids to go. A surplus cannabinoid circulating around your body provides what I describe as a heavy sensation. That's pretty much indicating you've hit your dose. Depending on what you're dealing with, you can also use that dosage rate to realise, as you clean up your system and as you re-normalise your body processes, then that dosage rate should and will naturally come down. So you need to intelligently interact with your medicines to understand what your dosage is. While we're on cannabis therapy, I want to have a quick word about swabbing, because there seemed to be some confusion before, or uncertainty, and also some anxiety about swabbing. I've been drug swabbed myself. I did take a positive test, and I got swabbed again in the bus, and that was also a positive, and they sent my sample down to Sydney. So yes, I got my court notice. Now, I was taking cannabis therapy to treat my own bowel polyp issues, and so I decided that what I was going to do is I was going to self-represent myself and go to court. I'd never been to court before, so I jumped onto New South Wales Legal Aid and New South Wales Law Online, very helpful reference, and I wrote my own medical statement, signed it myself, didn't pretend to be a doctor, just said what I was doing and why I was doing it. I got some references from my local fire brigade captain and blah, 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 and I basically stood up and I pleaded guilty, because the charge, of course, when you're being swabbed, you're being charged with having THC present in your saliva. So I entered a guilty plea with an explanation, and I explained what I'd done and that I was taking cannabis tincture for my bowel polyps, and I was self-medicating, and I was doing that because I wasn't going to go through the expensive and dangerous process that the public hospital system would provide, and that I was taking charge of my own health. The magistrate on the day, and I was one of 67 people that day, the magistrate on the day decided to award me a Section 10, and I was given a 6-month good behaviour bond, no fine. And I encourage everyone to do the same. Don't be afraid, be proud, stand up, all right? It's your body. No one's got the right to tell you what you can and can't put into it. And no one has the right to stop you doing the right thing by your body when you know it's the right thing. And the more of us who stand up and say, you know what, yeah, I do have THC in my saliva, and you know what, I can still drive very safely, thank you very much. So that's my take on it, all right? And there's quite a few people in town who've been through the same process, and most of us have got off. I have a basic support protocol here, which I encourage everybody to use, of anyone that I use and dispense tinctures through, irrespective of what their need is. I'm also going to make that available. Because this is a whole bunch of do's and don'ts that Steve was talking about, that means that your cannabis therapy will be that much more effective and your positive outcomes will be that much more likely. And I want to go through just a couple of those things, but the rest of it I'll leave for your perusal. It starts, of course, with essential fatty acids, because that is the start. If our essential fatty acids are not correct, then it doesn't matter how much tincture or any other cannabinoid you're putting in, it's just, you're wasting it. So I recommend obviously using hemp seed oil, hemp seed, and coconut oil. Coconut oil's got some lovely medium chain triglycerides, really easy for you to digest, get into them, they're great. It's all part of transitioning over to this ketogenic diets. I recommend everybody supplement with vitamin C. It doesn't matter whether it's your liposomic, whether it's powdered, please stay away from the tablets because they do all that acid chew on your teeth, that's bad juju. But powdered is really easy for dosing. Everybody should know that we dose vitamin C to bowel tolerance. So pay attention again to your body. It will talk to you if you listen. But as a general antioxidant, please supplement it. I recommend up to 3 grams a day, depending on what your load is. As an anti-inflammatory and antibiotic, I recommend turmeric and honey. Mixed together is a lovely fudgy paste. You can use it topically and internally, obviously. Really, really good for radiation burns. I get a lot of people coming with radiation for throat cancers and so on, unable to swallow, can't eat, liquid diets only, intubated, you name it, it's terrible. 3-4 doses of the turmeric honey usually means that the inflammation's gone. They're usually eating properly again within about 2 days. Okay, so really can't underestimate the anti-inflammatory power of turmeric. I will note though that about 5 or 10% of people seem to be quite sensitive in the gut to turmeric. So again, pay attention. It doesn't work for everyone, but it is powerful for many, many people. The next thing that's really important is the liver support. Anybody who's had any chemo or any pharmaceutical medication, the more the worse, the impact on the liver, whose job it is to break down toxins and poisons, means that most people's livers are severely compromised by the time they're dealing with a full-blown health crisis. And one of the easiest ways we can support and also rebuild liver tissue is through roasted dandelion root tea. And I've done it myself. Again, I'm speaking from experience. I had a malaria crash about 8 years ago and I lost about 30 kilos over about 4 weeks and ended up sleeping about 22 hours a day. The hospital refused to help. They said they couldn't do anything except put me on a waiting list for a liver transplant, and I happened to find an appropriate healer and she helped me rebuild to the point now where I've got a fully functioning liver, and a large part of that was dandelion. Really, really strong, a lot of dandelion tea. I make it very strong. You can make it as bitter and as strong as you can. No sweetener, no milk, black. It's got to speak to your liver, gallbladder, meridian. It must be bitter. Get into it. If you can't do cups of tea and you don't like the hot beverage, then you make an extra strong mix, stick it in your fridge and have a cold shot first thing in the morning. It wakes the liver up, gets the liver ready to go, and helps to rebuild healthy tissue into it. I've rebuilt cirrhosis livers, hepatic livers, you name it. We can do it with a roast dandy, but you've got to go in every day. You've got to back off the coffee, back off the tea, and bring the dandelion in. I generally recommend a soft organ tonic and immune boost, which again is a tincture combination that I make, which has got the Bidens pilosa. It's got herb robert for extra oxygenation and kidney health. It's got astragalus root in it, and it's got nettle compounds, including the root of the nettle plant, which is really good for your prostate health. Men, if you're not into that one, you should be. And I generally recommend that. It boosts T cell counts, vitalises and so on. It's just a general basic support. I encourage daily body movement, obviously. Our lymphatic system, which helps clean our blood, doesn't have a circulatory pump. We circulate it by compressing our calf muscles. Step work is really good. Walking is good. You don't have to run. Please don't run. It pounds your knees. Walk. Use steps. Be active. Ensure adequate hydration with clean, pure water. That's a no-brainer. Sugars, including fructose, should be severely restricted, if not completely removed. Soy products, unless they are fermented, should not be consumed. Okay, so fermented soy products, natto, tempeh, tamari, that's it. Please, the phytoestrogens and the phytic acid and the gut antigens that are in that are no good. Please leave it alone. Wheat should also be avoided. Yeah, due to its gluten, phytic acid and other digestive inflammatory effects. If we're trying to get the system running well, we've got to get the things that are annoying the system out of there. I recommend people alkalising with lemon water or bicarb water. Your kidneys naturally use bicarb as a buffering agent in their action. So if we want to superhydrate our kidneys, we can do that with a gentle bicarb water solution. Yeah, you can keep people off kidney dialysis by running them on bicarb water. They use that in third world emergency medicine. So don't underestimate rehydrating with bicarb water, please. Consider a short fast after 3 days to reboot your immune system. Yeah? Remembering that fasts should be done with adequate hydration and activity. You are not meant to be sedate when you fast. You are meant to energise your body. You are meant to sweat. You are meant to turn things on. Okay? So don't be afraid. Go hard. But yeah, even if it's just a 2-day fast, okay? A lot of Western society is afraid of running out of stuff, including food, and that we might die and, you know, starve and whatever. It's okay. It's okay. We're all carrying enough food on us. Even skinny dudes like me, we can go for a day or two, okay? But seriously, it just reboots it. It allows your body to shut down a whole bunch of things and turn them back on. So please consider it. I've spoken about the ketogenic diets, running on oils, not sugars. Lugol's Iodine Solution. This is the topical application of iodine to support your thyroid function. I recommend putting it on daily and watching how long it takes to stain. If your stain stays there for 24 hours, your iodine levels are okay. What you'll probably find is it'll disappear in the case of a couple of hours, in which case you're deficient. Keep applying every day, and you can do it anywhere on the body. The skin's a beautiful absorbent, but I tend to go down your centre meridian line here, and I'll do the first day on my throat, I'll do the next day on my thymus, and I'll do the third day on my solar plexus. If you're looking to introduce the alignment down into your reproductive system, you can go just under your navel too, around your ovaries if you're female, and then repeat next day. And what you'll find is not only are you throwing the iodine into your glandular system effectively, you're also, because you're intentional about it, producing that alignment between the mind, the emotions and the body. Iodine Solution, the Lugols, I'd recommend the best place to get it is a website up in Queensland called Plant Essentials. I think it's about the only place I found it in Australia I can get it without going to a doctor to get a script for a compounding chemist to pay twice as much for half as much. So, Plant Essentials. I also recommend them, not because I have any financial interest, because I don't, but they also provide hard to get other health products such as dimethyl sulfoxide, which you may know of, all the ingredients to make black salve and all those really hard to get things. Now, the kicker: severely restrict or completely remove tobacco, alcohol, pesticides, herbicides, artificial sweeteners, microwave food, hydrogenated oil, margarine, fast food and other known toxins and inflammatory agents. It's a no-brainer, but I'm still surprised by how many people I see who are trying to deal with their cancers and are still throwing toxins into their body as fast as they're putting their medicines in. It's not going to work like that. On a note of oils, high levels of omega-6 fatty acids have been shown to promote inflammation of the brain and will therefore aggravate both tumour growth and seizure frequency. Avoid linseed, sunflower and vegetable oil. Now, I've raised this because one of the mothers of a young epileptic that I have been working with thought that she'd try a ketogenic diet on her own, and so went, yep, that's fats and oils, so I'll just use mixed blended vegetable oil. And she sent her son's seizures through the roof. And it was a really powerful learning for her. The omega-6 was devastating. So if anyone's dealing with brain inflammations, glioblastomas, epilepsy, seizures of any sort, please be extremely aware of what oils you are using, particularly your seed oils. Please, because you may find that you can completely change your body's response by eliminating those. Just something to share. Rheumatoid arthritis can be managed with celery seed tea. Hope you all know that one. It's an oldie but a goodie. Vitamin E supplementation and the boron therapy. I've got a hyperlink on that sheet that'll take you back to the source information as to why that's been covered up. Please consider pawpaw leaf tea for your tumour control. It's a great one. It's really easy to grow, especially around these parts. If you haven't investigated, consider your bicarb maple syrup protocol. And I strongly recommend vegetarian and vegan diets to supplement with hemp seed or the hemp protein powder in particular, just to supplement your iron, essential amino acids and fatty acids, please. It's just another thing that I often see deficient, which really doesn't help with the organism working properly, particularly the vegan diet. And the other one I just wanted to share was migraine sufferers should consider tyramine as a trigger. Therefore, avoid pickled, fermented, smoked and marinated and aged meats, alcohol, chocolate, hard cheese, soy foods, avos, bananas, pineapple, eggplants, yeasts and broad beans. Because again, a lot of people who have unexplained migraines will find if you just have a little food diary for even just a couple of weeks, it'll be the tyramine levels that spike that'll trigger the migraine. So we can deal with them very, very quickly. So that's a basic list of do's and don'ts that Steve was mentioning. What I found is that the more you can stick to those kind of things, the greater your outcomes generally are. I'd just like to have a final note on black salve. Though I'm sure many of you are aware of black salve, I've supervised more than 1,000 people using black salve over the last few years, and there's some really important do's and don'ts. Lots of people, you can get black salve from a variety of places. There are different recipes. It is really important what is in that batch. If you don't know what's in the batch of black salve, don't use it, please. And if the person who supplies it to you can't tell you what's in it, please don't use it. It is a very important, powerful agent for skin tags, skin cancers, and also internal tumours. And there's been a lot of work that's been done recently with topical application on the outside of the body to draw out tumours from the internal organs. But I just want to make a couple of words on what ingredients should or should not be in a black salve and why. There are basically only 4 herbs that you need. Bloodroot, which is your anti-tumour and is your caustic agent. Galangal, which is your warming blood toner. Graviola, which is anti-tumour. Chaparral, which is anti-tumour and a really powerful antioxidant. They're your 4 herbs. And the ratio is pretty much equal parts of those 4 herbs. You wet it down with a bit of distilled water, not chlorinated water, it must be distilled water. And there's a reason for that, because the next ingredient we put in is the dimethyl sulfoxide, DMSO, which is about the most powerful penetrant we have. DMSO will drive anything that it's mixed with, and I mean anything, deep, deep into your cellular body, as deep as it needs to go. That's the penetrant agent that enables the salve to go in behind the tumour and start to lift it out. So what that means is, if you put in some nasty fracking water, chlorinated water, the DMSO is going to drive all those compounds in that water straight into the core of your being, which you will not want. So please, it's absolutely critical that it's distilled water. The burning agent is zinc chloride, and this is where it gets a little controversial, because zinc chloride is increasingly hard to get because it's an effective ingredient in black salve. So many people will shortcut and use hydrochloric acid or sulfuric acid, and this is where we're getting the very nasty media reports of terrible burns. It's really important that only the appropriate amount of zinc chloride, and there's a very specific amount which I'm not reporting right here. And the last ingredient is glycerin. And glycerin is basically just as a base and a low-grade preservative. I do have a black salve protocol for anyone who is intending on using black salve, irrespective of where you get it, and I'm going to leave that here too. That also has some do's and don'ts. Critically, you only use it on one location at a time, and you give yourself at least a 4-week healing period between applications. There's a lot of negative press about black salve, but you'd expect that because it's a really powerful healing agent and it works. It's really important that you understand when you're using it that you're loading your lymphatic system, so you want to increase your antioxidants, you want to hydrate well. It's an open wound for about 10 to 14 days, and you want to keep it clean. The protocol is there, and what I'm also going to leave is I've got some business contact cards. If anybody is interested in contacting me after this to discuss any of these things further, or interested in attaining further wellness, then please don't hesitate to contact me. The last thing I'd like to stress is that we're all seeking wellness, and none of us can do it alone, and so it's really important that we all continue to be the support people that we are and that we need and that we want to be. And know that Nimbin is here for anyone who needs the love and support for the healing work that we do, because like the Nimbunj here, this is what we're here for. Thanks for listening.
I don't think there'll be enough paper.